Hey guys, in this series we're going to create a web app dashboard UI kit, just like the ones that you can see on my profile page on ui8.net. And basically I will guide you through the whole process of creating a UI kit and a dashboard web app. So this the knowledge that you're going to learn on this series, you can apply for client work because those are the same exact processes when it comes to visual design. When it comes to wireframing and UX design, obviously there's much more going into it when it comes to client projects, but for the most part you're going to learn so much for both personal and clients project that it's really going to be worth it. So the first step of creating a dashboard UI kit is actually coming up with a visual design and generating some ideas. So similarly to what I would do for a client project, I would define a problem and come up with a first idea. And in this case, I actually sketched a wireframe of the very first dashboard. I don't know if you can see it over here, but basically this is going to be my guide for the very first screen. And obviously there is not going to be like intricate logic in the creation of the UI kit as there would be in a client project, simply because it's a fictional project. It's something that is not real. It's not going to be a real prototype or a real project. So the reason why I use the different elements ain't going to be like super square, because that's just going to take a lot of time, which I don't think it's going to be valuable for the person who will download and use the UI kit, because every project is going to be different for them. So the UI kit, the main purpose of the UI kit is to save them time when creating a new visual style, or you reusing elements and adding elements to a current project which you already built with the UI kit. So basically you can speed things up, but the UI kit shouldn't be a prototype which is exactly like a client project. So that being said, let's jump into Sketch and let's build this thing out. Okay, so now we're in Sketch and let's create the very first dashboard. So the way I usually like to start is to go under the insert panel and go on artboard, and I will select responsive web. And out of these options, I usually like to work on desktop HD, simply because it has a width of 1440 pixels, which I think it's quite good for dashboard design. And let's rename this to 1. And the way I renamed it, by the way, is by clicking on Command and plus R, and I just renamed it very quickly. So let's set this up, and I'm going to create a rectangle over here, which is going to be our sidebar. And let's start by actually modifying a little bit the color. And basically when I start a new visual design project, I don't want to go into design systems right away. I don't want to go and do a lot of minute detail work from the start. I just want to really play around with the canvas and really come up with a style which I think looks good. So yeah, I like to keep my options free at first. So this is actually a very important part of the process, which is we have to decide which typography to use, which font to use. And I think we are going to go with Lato for this one, which by the way, it's a font which it's a font family which I used quite a bit both in my UI kits and my client projects. So I mean, it's I think it looks very good. It's a Google free Google web font, so basically you can download this for free, and it's amazing because on the web Google Web Fonts will load pretty fast, and they are very well supported. So that's always something good and something to keep in mind when working on a project. Now let's go over here and let's create the base structure. So at this stage, what I'm going to do is to pretty much find my way around when it comes to like the visual space, the visual look of this. So I'm not going too much into the detail, but just want to really lay out a foundation for this dashboard. So here we're going to have some graphs. Here's going to be the second graph, and at the top we are going to have the filters menu and some options that will allow the user to modify the graph. So let's go over here, let's make this a square. Actually, let's change the thing up. And I'm always looking at the wireframe, the original wireframe from time to time, and yeah, just trying to bring this thing to life. Now let's set things up over here. Okay, I think we're in a good shape right now, and I'm just going to go and add some labels at the very bottom. So as you can see, sometimes I'm working in a linear fashion, and some other times I'm just like freestyling around, depending on the type of project, depending on a few variables. But when I'm first starting out a project, new visual redesign or a new visual design, and I don't have too many rules to follow, I'll just freestyle my way around. Now what I did here, by the way, is I actually took one of these and I duplicate them by selecting Alt, moving it around, and then I use the Command plus D. So basically it copies along that same axis where you made the first copy with Alt key. So yeah, this is something that's interesting and useful. So over here I think I'm going to go with a rectangle. Let's go over here and let's move this one around. I won't lie, usually the first screen is like the toughest one, and it's my first time doing a first screen while recording it, so just bear with me, guys. It's going to be a little bit tough, but we are going to push through it. Now I might consider having a little bit of a color background, and I usually like to give it a tint towards the bluish hues. So we might consider having something around these lines, which is very light, but still, you know, it adds a little bit of depth to the whole thing. Now regarding the shadows, I'm not sure we want to go with these type of shadows, maybe a bigger blur, and we can make them lower in opacity, so you cannot really see it from here, but I just gave it an opacity in the alpha channel of 10. So this might be something we can consider. Now over here, let's add a value such as this one. What shall we do over here? Maybe a random person's name, which I'm doing this with the craft plugin by Envision, which I don't know if you haven't already downloaded the craft plugin by Envision. I would highly suggest you to do so, because it really can be a great time saver. There you have a lot of options over here to generate custom type and custom photos, and also much more. You can also sync InVision projects directly from Sketch, which is pretty much amazing. And let's go over here. Let's create a oval shape, and in this oval shape we are going to add a profile picture. And I'm going to use the data feature in Sketch, clicking on face, and as you can see, bam, we have a nice looking image. So okay, this is starting to take shape. And by the way, I'm leaving these ones out because these are going to be the most difficult ones, the most complicated parts. So yeah, I'm just going to leave those out. So let's change things up over here. So it's going to be team member, and here we're going to have an amount. Over here we are going to add a variation, and on this one over here we're going to have maybe a tag, and here's going to be a few options which I'm not even sure if we need to actually add them directly. So let's make these auto. Let's move this around, and I'm going to use this option over here, which is distribute layers horizontally, and basically this will distribute the layers in a way that it makes sense, like visually, like there's going to be even spacing. So it's always a great tool to actually have to use whenever you want to distribute things evenly. And over here we're going to add an amount. Yep. Yeah, I think this is okay. And let's try and give it this a medium. Variation. Let's actually add one more tag over here. Maybe this could be type. Let's do a USD. Okay, so maybe you might consider having the labels a little bit in a bolder font, and we might consider also adding a little bit of distance between one letter and the other. In that way we can make the text a little bit lighter on the eye. So, and also we might just make this typography a little bit lighter, but not too light, in a way that it's going to be difficult for users to see. So as you can see so far, the current screen is actually taking shape. It's obviously work to do and things to improve on, but yeah, I mean, so far it's looking okay. It's a good starting base. So let's change this from fixed to this option over here, which is auto. And basically what this allows us to do is to change the text from being in a rectangle to being in an auto selection. So basically if I change it You can see that now it's going to be in a rectangle, but I prefer Alt for this specific setting. And let's do this tag over here. Let's maybe change the color a little bit. Maybe I'm gonna go with a blue, something around these lines. And once I select it, I'm going to apply the same color to the text so that it disappears. And now I'm going to select a darker version of it. So yeah, I mean, this is a nice tag variation compared to the most common ones, which you can see. So it's going to be a lighter tag on the eye, and yeah, I mean, it's pretty much it's looking okay, I guess. So let's change the tag name to something like primary. Maybe this could be a tag for something which is an important feature of the dashboard or something around those lines. And I feel like we might consider having an icon over here. So what I'm gonna do is I downloaded this Sketch plugin called the Icon Font, and under Icon Font I can go under Grid Insert and select Material, and basically this will open up a menu inside of Sketch with the selection of material icons by Google. So this is pretty cool, and let's give it a shot with dots. Okay, sometimes the search engine in Google Material Icons isn't like that straightforward, at least for what I am usually searching for. So yeah, just bear with me for a minute on this. Let's just find an icon which could be a icon that makes sense to have at the very right part of the screen of this element. So how about an arrow? I think this could definitely be something that you might consider using in a web app dashboard in this specific case. So let's actually convert this arrow to make it a outline. So under layer, convert to outline, and now this is not a font anymore. This has become an actual icon and shape. So yeah, let's set this one over here, and maybe let's give it a little bit more, just a little bit more color, and fill these tags are a little bit too up. So yeah, I mean, I think it's looking okay. Now what I would do is to add a little bit of radius to the corners, and basically what the radius is the is this option over here. So if we set the radius to 0, you can see that we're just going to have like a straight edge border. But if we add some radius and some pixel values to it, it's going to be a little bit smoother. So it will just have that feeling of being a little bit of a more user-friendly kind of element. So yeah, it just adds to the styling of the actual page. Now let's go and so since I'm pretty happy with this, I might just make this a little bit smaller. Also, I'm going to use the medium or even bold. Yeah, I think bold works better in this case. It's gonna give it a size of 11, and we'll make this tag a little bit smaller. So here we go. I think we're in pretty good shape. Maybe I might consider using 12 for these typography, and we can also scale these ones up with these ones down just a little bit. So as you can see so far, guys, it's a lot of tweaking. It's a lot of trying to envision how things will be looking forward. And yeah, I mean, it's this is pretty much what you're going to do if you're looking to become especially a visual designer or a UI designer. I personally believe that, like, even if you're a UI designer, you still do UX, because I mean, there's no such thing as just being a UI designer without having a knowledge or understanding of UX. So, you know, regardless, you're always going to be a little bit of a UI UX designer. But that's just my take on this. So feel free to see it however you prefer. And let's add a radius to this too. And I think we should be in good shape. So one thing that I can do here for sure is to make a symbol. Now, why am I making the symbol for this element over here? The reason why I'm making it is because by having a symbol, we can have repeating elements, and we can change things up, so you can create a more scalable design solution. So in this case, I actually set a custom shortcut to create a symbol, but you can simply do it by clicking on here. So once you click, basically this window will appear, which is create new symbol. And in this case, I'm just going to add a descriptive name, such as let's say something like row, and then default. So as you can see now, I have this name, which is row, and then this slash, and then default. And if you're wondering why I'm using this slash, it's actually pretty simple. Once you're going to have like many variations of this row, and if you change it maybe to like, I don't know, active, and I go under the symbols panel, you're going to see row, and then this arrow, and then you're going to see active and default. Now let's say that I don't have this slash. I'll simply show you why this slash is super important, especially when you're doing when you're working on complicated projects. You're going to see just row active, row default. So no arrow, no nested options in the menu. So yeah, now we're in the symbols page. Let's go back to the main page, which, by the way, I want to rename, and the way you rename it is you simply like click on it, you double click on it, and I'm going to rename this to web app. So here we go. Let's duplicate the symbol, and I'm going to do something around these lines. So similar to what we've done before, I just duplicated by clicking on Alt, dragging this symbol down, and then Command plus D. So not sure I like them at this distance, maybe a little bit more. So I'm just gonna drag this one a little bit down, and then use this property to distribute it. So yeah, I think this one is looking a little bit better for sure. And yeah, I think we're onto something. Let me check on the symbols if we make the height of this a little bit smaller, and I'm pressing Alt while actually doing this. Yeah, I think this is okay. I'm not sure if I want to change it really. Just gonna undo it for now. Let's just do this again, distribute unevenly. And yeah, I think we are in good shape. Now let's focus on the side menu. And for the side menu, I'm just going to use a few material icons. So I'm going to select this one, and I'm going to duplicate this just a few times. We're gonna have 5 menu items, and I just selected this one over here, going back to plugins, going grid insert, material, and let's click on let's select this one perhaps. I mean, the reason why I'm selecting these, it's pretty random. Again, guys, this is a UI kit. This isn't like a real project. So the logic and the UX part of this is completely, it's almost completely out of the window, meaning that there really isn't like much to follow when it comes to the logic, because it's not the most important thing for the users that will use this UI kit and that will leverage the UI kit for gaining speed in their creative process. So that's that, and let's also add this option over here. So we have a few menu items, and let's make them a little bit bigger. I'm just going to click on Shift, make them bigger. Now I'm going to convert to outlines, and let's move this down a little bit. Let's click on here so that we can distribute them evenly. And let's also give it them a opacity, which is going to be a lower opacity, not that low. Maybe something around these lines, yeah, something around these lines could work. And let's just make that a little bit bigger. So I'm using the scale option over here, and let's just bring them down a little bit, and again distribute vertically. So I think we are in a good shape when it comes to the side menu. Now let's add a oval, and this is going to be for the profile picture. Set faces. Okay. And yet again, I think that I'm going to make these rows just a little bit smaller in height, just to give the layout a little bit of more breathing space, as we can say. And yeah, I think this is coming up well. Maybe I'm not sure about the size of the icons. I'm just going to make them a little bit smaller, I guess. So yeah, this could be it, but I might change my mind about this. So I think we're in good shape overall. And now let's focus on the filters on top, or actually let's change the settings over here. So as you can see, as we have these symbols, we can actually change the values with data. So in this case, if I go under faces, you can see that we can change the faces up. So for UI kits, I always like to have like lighter faces, like this one. Just adds for a lighter design. So I'm not really worried about the subject. I'm more worried about the if it's a light photo or if it's like a darker photo, just for purely for the visual balance of the overall design. So yeah, I mean, just something to consider. And if it's a dashboard, I might want to have people who are actually look professional for this specific context, but again guys, like I'm not too worried about this. It's more of a visual kind of thing. So I'm just going to change this one up too. Let's give it a few tests. And I mean, I could totally go on Unsplash and look around for profiles, but going and using the data feature is just a very easy way to navigate through this. And yeah, I think we are in good shape when it comes to this. Now, I'm not sure if I want the menu to be a little bit bigger. Yeah, maybe just a little bit like this. Let's bring everything in center. And maybe the face just a little bit smaller. Okay, this should be good. Now let's go and attack the beast, which is the graph, so to speak. So let's add a few lines, and I'm going to duplicate. And as you can see, I'm using this duplicate feature quite a lot of times. I use it all of the time. So let's make the borders much lighter, maybe around this value. I mean, I just want them to be barely visible. And I'm going to add some mounts over here. Text is going to be much smaller, and let's go, and again we're going to duplicate this quite a bit of times. Okay. Right, so let's add some of these graph elements, and maybe let's start playing around with some colors. And I think we're going to go with this style, which is having some graph which aren't really too bulky. So again, guys, here I'm just playing around with what I think could look well, visually speaking. So this could be some graphs for a control panel, for a dashboard kind of design. And let's bring this up just a little bit. And yeah, I think we are in pretty good shape. Gonna make these lines just a little bit smaller in width. And yeah, quite happy with the results so far. And maybe let's make this item a little bit higher. And we should be in good shape. Also, we could actually have double graphs going on here. But I'm not too sure about it. Let's duplicate this whole thing and let's see what could look well in parallel. So over here I'm just playing around at this point, just trying to see if there is potential for some tweaks, some updates and adjustments to this current section. And yeah, I'm trying to get a feeling for what the big picture will be on the style of this. So yeah, maybe something around these lines could be interesting to look at. Yeah, not too sure about this color, but yeah, maybe something around these lines could be good. It's always hard. It's always hard to find that visual direction, since the main thing to consider is that once you find that visual direction in the first screen, you have to follow it for all of the other screens. So the first screen always sets the tone for the entire project, and that's a big responsibility. So you really want to nail that first screen. You want to set the tone for the rest of the project well, since all of the other screens, visually speaking, they are going to be a reflection of the very first one. So again, try your best in the first part of the project so that you can then leverage the good results of that first screen within the rest of the project. So I think we're good when it comes to this specific part. Let me see if it's worth making these a little bit bigger. Not sure. Not really sure about it. Quite like this style overall. I think it's working pretty well, and yeah, I'm quite pleased with it. So one thing that I'm going to do is to create a tooltip, and the reason being is I want to see what these graphs would look like once they are animated, or there's some sort of interaction. So I'm actually going to create a tooltip over here, and let's make this darker. And so yeah, I mean, the tooltip is just a way to add some depth to this actual concept, so we can test things out. And the way I'm doing it is I create a rectangle, then a triangle, and swap them around at the same color. Bam. Now, as I have these two shapes, I need to unite them. So the way you do it is pretty simple. Select the rectangle, select the triangle, and click on union. Boom, we have a united combined shape. Now over here I'm going to select this text, add it here. Okay, so it's looking okay so far. Maybe a tooltip, we can just the rectangle just a little bit, go on the top. Let's change the color. Okay, let's add this tooltip to a symbol. Okay, so I think it's going pretty well so far. It's an exhausting process because it's simple, yet there's a lot of thinking involved. You really have to think through the experience, and again, since it's the first screen, this is going to be the hardest one, but once you establish that style well, it's going downhill from there. So just focus on the first one, really master it, and then you're going to have an easier life. Let's add a setting icon over here. Of course, I didn't select the setting. So let's go on material. Again, settings. On settings, and we are going to add this icon. And let's use the same color as this icon below. And yeah, this is pretty well. Let's add some filtering options, because those are always useful to have. It's going to be filter by, and then we are going to have another arrow. So let's reuse the same arrow that we used at the bottom. And the reason being is that you always want to be consistent with the components and the icons which you are using. So in that way, the project is more likely to have quite a bit of consistency. And yeah, I think this looks good. Now let's do something a little bit different. Let's add a sort by date. So this is going to be November 2023, because we're working in the future. And let's add the arrow again. Now, as you can see, I'm not really focused too much on the groups. I'm not focused too much on renaming stuff. I'm just trying to sort out the visuals. Let's say calendar, maybe date. Yep, that's what I'm searching for, but let's duplicate this. So yeah, guys, it's a process. Sometimes it's linear, other times it's not as linear. As you can see, and as you're going to learn in this series, it really depends on a few variables, and depending on the project, on the stage on the project you're in. So don't be too strict when it comes to your actual methodologies, and yeah, to all be good. So let's move this one a little bit on the left. Let's give it some air. And I'm going to duplicate this, or actually I'm going to make this a symbol. It's going to be form, then calendar. Okay. Let's use the variation one. All right, I think we're in good shape with this. However, there's still something that I can't figure out what exactly, but we can definitely improve this somehow. It's certainly a process, and you have to take in account for these kind of things. Well, for sure we can change the tags. Let's actually create a nested symbol over here. So I'm going to create a symbol for the tag, and I'm going to create multiple tags. So this is the primary, or actually let's call it blue. Then I'm going to duplicate these symbols a few times and create a few variations when it comes to the colors. So let's change the hue a little bit. It can be 234. Let's go over here and change it again. Actually, let me check. Let's just duplicate and make it custom. So at this point, I'm literally just like playing around with the different colors, different options available, and trying to envision what the final will look like. And yeah, just trying to come up with an interesting solution. So it's going to be tag orange. This one is tag purple, and tag green. So now we are going to have a few different tags that we can swap in this view over here. So let's go on under the symbol, just like the second one, and I can change the tag to green. Let's change this one to orange and this one to purple. Now I think this is making it a little bit more interesting from the visual point of view, maybe I could create another tag just to give it even more of a different visual dynamic. And here we go. Yep, I think we are going in a good direction with this. Oh, actually, I forgot to rename this tag, which is tag red. Let's go over here, red, and yeah, pretty happy with this one. Now let's try and change the color just a little bit, just to give it that bluish tint, I guess. Let's try to use bold over here, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with the direction so far. I think this is looking good, and not sure if using the bold or the very light one. It really depends on the type of dashboard that we want to create. Maybe we could consider the light approach. Interesting. Let's give it a shot. Okay, I think this is interesting. I might consider doing that. Okay, so data changed the faces. Let's go ahead. Okay, this one is looking okay. Let's just come up with some random names and the let's actually make this one a little bit bigger in width, and I think we are good at this point. Now the only thing that we'll do right now is to actually change the graphs, or actually just make these symbols, and the way I will do it is simply select everything, either click on create a symbol, or I'll just use my personal shortcut, and I'm going to name this graph 1. Let's create a symbol for this one too. This is going to be graph 2, and let's briefly just group these together well. So I'm going to create a group with the graphs, and let me do the same right now over here, so that I don't forget to name them exactly the same. And I'm going to create group for the labels, and another group for these ones too. Now let's also group the lines. And let's group the lines over here too. I'll rename this rectangle to background, and this one to background too. Let's also lock the background layers so that they won't move, and I think this is pretty good. I'm also going to create so over here we have the form, the calendar. Let's also create a symbol for this one, which is going to be form/filters, and let's create a symbol for this one too, which is going to be form/settings. Now, when it comes to naming the symbols and the symbols library, in this UI kit, I'm not going to be too strict with the naming conventions and all that, simply because it's not a client project, so we don't really have to go too much in depth into it. So yeah, just keep this in mind. But if you're working on a large client project, you definitely have to focus quite a bit of attention in the naming conventions, and especially if you're working with a large team where there are other designers too, so always keep that in mind. Let's create or actually I'm not going to create a symbol for this specific one. However, I am going to create a symbol for the side menu. So as you can see, we have quite a bit of symbols, quite a number of them, and let's just use the Sketch Cleaner plugin to sort the layers based on their y-axis. I'm going to drag them down over here. Let's have the labels in a group. Let's bring the graphs right above that, and the balance on the top. Let's use the Sketch Cleaner to sort layers based on their X position, and we should be good to go. So guys, this is the very first version of the very first screen of this new dashboard project. Not sure if we're going to change things up, but basically this is how I would create a dashboard project from scratch, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and be sure to check out the upcoming videos on this, because I'm going to film and document the entire process of creating this UI kit from scratch. So you're going to learn a lot on this series, so be sure to check it out and subscribe and hit the bell notification option if you haven't already. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.